He is a winner of the Queen's 2011 Anniversary Prize for Water Research and the 2005 UK Royal Society Brian Mercer Senior Award for Innovation in Science and Technology. He is also winner of the 2008 Science Business First Pan-European Academic Enterprise Award in the category of Energy and Environment. Cora Water Technologies were also awarded the Institute of Chemical Engineers 2011 Innovation and Excellence Award in the Water Supply and Management category. Professor Sharif is a founder of Modern Water PLC, a London Exchange AIM market listed company specialized in desalination and renewable power generation. Prof. Sharif is a member of the Qatar Foundation's Expatriate Arab Scientists Forum. He obtained his first degree in chemical engineering from Baghdad University in 1986, followed by MSc and PhD from University of Wales, Swansea, in 1989 and 1992, respectively. He has more than 170 publications, is an inventor and co-inventor of more than 20 patents, and has supervised over 20 PhD theses and more than 40 master dissertations. And he has a number of award winners as well, but it's too long. And if you're interested, you can go online, you can find out more. I invite Professor Sharif here. Thank you.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, the source of wisdom and truth. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Good evening or good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm absolutely thrilled and delighted to be here today to talk about the role of faith and science in the development of civilization, but also to be more specific to this audience today, why there should be no conflict between science and faith. First, I would like to thank the organizers of the event to give the opportunity for such a wonderful gathering and opportunity. Before I start my talk, I thought to mention the world governments and communities set goals for the millennium. And those goals, unfortunately, we did not achieve for obvious reasons. Because the practice is one thing, and the dreams or the wishes are two different. And this has a relation to what we talk about today. But in this slide, we see actually that human progress has made significant changes, and as we move forward, the time scale for each age we go through is getting shorter and shorter, and we're going in an exponential way. And the reason why for this is our tools, our capabilities, our number of people engaging in solving the problem is on the increase, and therefore we are able to find the solution quicker and quicker, and also able to find even better solution. So the more we are engaged, and this is actually a manifestation or a practical example of how important the multidisciplinary approach, or in other words, the more of us look to the same problem, we find a solution faster. The more of us share the same problem, because we have different ways of looking to things, the quicker the solution can be found. And I can give many examples, even personal experience of that, but the time is short, and I'd like to focus on the lecture. So what you see actually, the big steps we made since the industrial revolution, because we have more tools, we have extra tools, we are able to get us to the technology age or the information age. And what the information age showed us is that over a short period of time, we made a leap, a huge step, progress. And the reason why actually made information available, the access to information. So there are two important aspects about the information age or the information revolution. One is the availability of the information, obviously. And the second important one is actually the horizontal expansion of information. Previously, there was the hierarchy way of gaining knowledge. You learn from your teacher, and your teacher learned from his teacher, and so on. So it's a very hierarchy way. And you can see all these like pillars, which we call them different school of thoughts, standing on their own, and everybody claims to have the truth about everything. The horizontal expansion of information, which made available to us by the information revolution, allow us individually to have access and learn about other subjects. The most important aspect of this, or the most outcome of this going to be, is not just bringing, the too far away from us closer in terms of the social context, but also will allow to unify the truth about things. In science, for example, we are able to a certain extent, unify the truth about each subject of science. And that's what we have, for example, physics, chemistry, engineering, for example, different disciplines of engineering, different subjects of science, because we are able to unify or agree among the community, the scientific community, these are the fundamentals or the principles. When it comes to the social context or the faith context, we haven't done that. Every group claims to have the ultimate truth. Because now, how many religions in the world, for example? Thousands. They all have the ultimate truth. Because it was done in a very hierarchy way. And there was no review process or a thorough process which is we like. So this horizontal expansion of the information allowed us individually to learn about other things. And obviously, this will bring us to next step, if we haven't got there. I'm confident what we are now will take us to the next stage, which is the sustainable age. But there is one thing we are lacking at the moment, or the world is lacking, which will delay our, for example, goal of reaching the sustainable stage. And that, to me, is faith. But in a more tangible, more practical way, is wisdom. What the world lacks today is not the resources as we hear it all the time. It's not the energy, it's not the water, it's not the food, it's not that sort of thing. What the world lacking today is wisdom. And wisdom has a direct link to faith. And in particular, for example, in the faith of Islam, there is a clear verse saying, "من أوتي الحكمة أوتي خيرا كثيرا." The one who is giving wisdom is giving plenty of good things. So what the world lacks today is wisdom. And sadly to mention today actually that the Arab world and the Muslim world today lost one of its wisest men. The Sultan Qaboos of Sultanate Oman sadly passed away today, and I see him as one of the pillars of wisdom in our part of the world, in the Middle East, as well as in the world. So may God bless his soul. So scientists, groups, societies, everything, everybody, we all, especially for our younger generation and our children and grandchildren, we like them to reach the sustainable age. And that's why actually I'm trying to say here, only with faith we could reach there. And I will give examples and show that by the combination or the integration of science and faith, we can get there, and I will give example of those. Please, next. I think we can skip this because of the time. I need to focus on, yes. So now we go to, for example, the question of faith. And before actually we get to the subject, sorry, I should wear my glasses. Yes. Okay. I didn't realize actually I need to have my eye tested, or maybe the screen. Anyway, let's look at, for example, the subject of a creation, for example, or how science look at the universe, okay? And where is the missing point in that aspect? Scientists today look at the world is made of matter and energy. Okay? And that is what all scientific theories, what all scientific principles based around those things. But fundamental to this process is knowledge or information. The question is, do we create knowledge or information, or in particular knowledge, because the truth, or we discover? I think every scientist, real scientist, will agree that we don't create knowledge, we only discover knowledge. Okay? But also when we look to this knowledge, is consistent, is elegant, and is also universal. So the knowledge, the truth about something scientific, whether it's here or in other part of the earth, it will be the same. If we look at, for example, the elements of matters, for example, the one on earth, the same we find in the universe. So this knowledge or this information, the principles, I talk about, for example, the physical principles of the world, they all consistent, which suggest they cannot be random. They must come from one source. If they were to come from different sources, there would be some inconsistencies. But because we observe them as uniform, consistent, elegant, tell us two things. One is they must come from one source. And the second thing tell us this source must be intelligent and must be powerful beyond description. And that's, to me, the cornerstone of faith. So every scientist thinks that he or she creates knowledge, it can be a real scientist. Real scientists, they can only discover knowledge. Okay? Please. Next. Yes, please, yes, if you don't mind, yes. So, what the religions, what the various faiths said about this knowledge. Okay? For example, in Christianity, this knowledge described or expressed as the gift of the heaven, without further description. In other religions, knowledge is defined with some definitions, like first-hand knowledge and second-hand knowledge, which is obviously the second-hand knowledge is the one we learn from the others. We acquire by reading or by the first-hand knowledge, the one we discover ourselves. But still, in the end of the day, the source is not us. It's something outside our own domain. Okay? In Islam, knowledge is giving a more comprehensive description called ilm. And ilm is not, because knowledge is the truth about thing. Ilm is more comprehensive. So in other words, everything we know of, whether it's at elementary level or at a very high level, is within the framework of ilm, or you can say knowledge, but actually is a bigger than the word knowledge, which is mean all the information, all the truth about things called ilm. Now we lost both. So in other words, if scientists believe in the power of knowledge, and obviously as a scientist, we believe in the importance, we have to ask the question, where does knowledge come from? Okay. And is it true that the world made only of matter and energy? Is it true? Reality is not, because the principles, the information is coexisted with those two things. Okay? Because even people, when they talk, for example, about the Big Bang theory or any other form of explanation to the universe, they always talking about a process. They always talk about something happened. So there must be, like what we call it today, a software or an algorithm or a program or a concept or an idea, information, process. So those things coexisted. And is it true that the world made of matter and energy? Because if we look at any matter, it's a form of energy. So if we look at any matter, even a human, if you take any element now and subdivide it into the subatomic level, you're going to come to the point where there's no matter. And this is what the latest, for example, advances in modern physics, what they call the string theorem, okay? Which is they talk about like strings it's one-dimensional strings. They have the interaction, they have no matter, they have no mass, no any shape of relation to mass. And those strings, the interaction between those strings formed for example, matter. And then, in other words, everything we see around us is just a condensed form of energy. So there's a forming process. So everything we see around us is really a form of energy, is a condensed form of energy. Okay? So therefore, we could accurately say the world of the origin of everything is energy, and everything we see is a form of energy or formed by energy. Because this will take us to two concepts which are confused even by religious people: creation and making. A creation, when we bring something from nothing. But making, when we use we use some materials, some elements to make, so you can make the chair, you don't create the chair. So all ideas of, for example, using the word creation or creative or I create is actually is not really accurate scientifically. We can only make or form to a certain extent, but we can never create, because the creation to bring something from the a non-existence. Next, please. Yeah, I mentioned about the scientific knowledge and how which is the truth about subjects that form, for example, so what's important about science is the truth. So when you talk about, for example, the physics or chemistry or any subject, is the collection of all the truth or what agreed to be the truth about that subject, which is make the subject of science, for example, whether it's in engineering, in natural sciences, and so on. So therefore, when we have the truth about something, we call it science. Next, please. Okay. So I did mention actually about the meaning of knowledge. Please. Next. Okay. Now we come to the subject of science and belief. In science, as a scientist, science, we believe, is an objective, okay? It's something that you can verify, you can measure, you can quantify. But let's be clear about this. Not everything in science today is being measured or being quantified. All our understanding now, for example, of the universe in astrophysics is based on mathematical description, because nobody went there and measured how many stars or what the size of the stars and so on. So there is a lot of theoretical explanation. So not everything about science being measured, quantified, because there's misconception. I once was reading a book to Professor Brian Cox, and he said, in his book, actually, is interestingly, he was talking about energy and about, in particular, about the Einstein most famous equation. And he said, we scientists, in the first page, if everything we cannot measure and we cannot quantify, we throw out of the window. And I was laughing, actually. I was on the plane, and I said, everything said in that book is all about theory. Nobody been able to measure, nobody been able to quantify, and I can say this, because the square of the speed of light is infinity, correct? Nobody going to be able to practically measure the square speed of light. If any scientist, they can expect that we could one day have a machine or a device to measure infinity, then we are, so you can see actually how ideas used both in religion or in science, which shows there is a lack of understanding, lack of complete understanding. However, I must say, in science is less frequent, in faith and religion is almost common. Okay? And that's the difference. So science can be almost like a religion in some aspects, but is less I would say less rigidity than religion. And I wish if science like religion, we could have made more money getting funding for scientific ideas, okay? But in the end of the day, there is a lack of complete understanding in both subjects, but one is less than the other. Obviously, I have hope, more hope, for the scientists to be faithful or have faith, but obviously less of a religious person just to become a scientist, okay, without any effort or without gaining the knowledge. So therefore, in the subject of belief, if the belief is true, which become knowledge, and therefore is science, in that case, a true belief is science. Correct? But false belief cannot be knowledge even if it is sincere. So this is when we separate the truth about things, the knowledge, and the subjective nature of the belief. Doesn't matter how sincere or how good intention the career is. Please, next. So as I said, if the faith is true, so it is like science, and therefore the two things can be integrated. And the job of scientists is to establish the truth about things. The job of the believers as well to establish the truth of their belief. And I give examples here from the Quran, and I'll give other examples. Because we like to reach a stage in faith, there are three stages. There is a stage of you think there is a creator. You accept there is a creator. This is called submission. in Islamic terminology, this is we call it being a Muslim. And the word a Muslim is not unique to the Muslims or the followers of Muhammad. It is to every believer in one God. The first person, the first prophet who used the term Muslim is Abraham, the father of all faiths. And it's a privilege and honor to be from the homeland from Abraham. I was born only miles away from his birthplace in the south of Iraq, in Ur. So every person except the concept of one creator is a Muslim. The second stage is a believer, which is a mu'min, okay? So if we use the English terminology, which is very helpful and more subtle, so Islam, it can be under I think. The second stage, mu'min, it can be under the word I believe. So there is more, I would say there is more knowledge to this. There is more assurance to this. There is a bit more of certainty. Okay? The third level of this, which is in Islam, we call it yaqeen. And yaqeen practically, اطمئنان القلب. In English, is certain. And the example we have in the Quran is Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam. When he said, he asked God to show him how to bring life to the dead. And the answer was, أَوَلَمْ تُؤْمِنْ? Aren't you a believer? He said, Bala. He said, yes. وَلَكِنْ لِيَطْمَئِنَّ قَلْبِي. Because I want to be more certain. And those levels, unfortunately, we don't reflect in our relationship or in our faith practice. A lot of people, with all due respect, thanks God I'm a Muslim. But the Quran actually never praised the Muslims, praised the believers. There is not a verse in the Quran to say being a Muslim alone will take you to heaven or achieve you. It's always, Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu. There's always, إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ أُخْوَةٌ. The Quran never said the Muslims are brothers and sisters, only the believers. And the believers is not excluded to the Muslims only. It is to all those believe, not just they think. Okay? Next step, please. Okay. Now, there is another issue in the understanding of the other dimension, the spiritual dimension, because we use words and terminologies we are less really familiar with and we don't understand. Like the word miracles. We hear it all the time. But what we don't understand, what is the meaning of the word miracle and why the word miracle being described? The word miracle described in most cases for events we think that happen, cannot be explained by divine power and does not conform to any of the laws and the principles of the universe. That's not true. There is nothing in this universe happen in disorder. As a scientist, we have something called entropy. Okay? We would expect things when I leave my room untidy. There is no chance, even in billions of years, I'll come to my room, I'll find it tidy by itself. And both my wife and my daughter are sitting here to know how messy I am at home. So there is an order in the world. They nod their heads. That's bad news for me. Okay? So this order in the universe tells us that everything done precisely. Okay? So, but what happened to miracles? Because we don't understand the principles that govern those events, we call them miracles. Like, for example, if you were to tell somebody 100 years ago, you will talk to somebody in China and you see him and you talk to him, he will think that's a miracle. Okay? Or he will think that you are, you are mad. But now it's not a miracle because we know the principles govern this phenomena. If you tell, for example, the companions of Prophet time, we tell them about, because the life we're living now, it was more than the heaven they were promised. If you tell somebody in the desert at that time, you say, you drive in the desert from Mecca to Medina in 15 minutes, 20 minutes in air-conditioned car, for example, it would be like, this is a description of heaven. But because now the principles are known to us, it's normal. Okay? But there's one thing interesting about this, and I will mention this again. We don't have to understand all the principles govern those technologies, for example, to benefit from them. So you don't have to understand how the mobile or how the car, the very details of how it works, to benefit from it. Similarly, you don't have to understand every aspect of the faith to benefit from it. Correct? Nobody now, you will throw the phone because you say, I don't understand this, or I don't understand. Of course, it's useful to understand the principles govern, for example, because that will be beneficial to you and to the community by transferring your ideas or knowledge about it. But obviously, it should not stop you from having the benefit. Again, with faith, not because we don't have an answer to all questions around creation and the rest of it, we should ignore faith. And this is the question I tell to my scientific scientist colleagues, that I said it is unscientific. It is a non-scientific to conclude about something before establishing the truth about it. And that's very much the scientific process. You cannot conclude unless you do, or you have an evidence, theoretical or practical. So how come you, scientific community, made a decision about creation without even establishing or having the tools or the evidence about that? Why? Because the most inconvenient thing about faith is accountability. Most people who try to reject faith is what comes with faith. Because when you have faith, you see, when you are a Muslim, there is very little obligations. But when you are a believer, that comes with obligations. يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام. He didn't say يا أيها الذين أسلموا. الصلاة على المؤمنين كتاب موقوتا. He didn't say on the Muslims. Okay? الزكاة. So all the duties, all the responsibilities. So faith comes with responsibility. And most of us doesn't like the responsibilities. So it's convenient not to have faith, because faith comes with responsibilities and with accountabilities. And that's actually what is unpopular about faith. Because science cannot address the question, and yet the religious community cannot address the question. So in knowledge, we have miracles, which is events that we cannot explain because the principles are not known to us. We have discoveries which made by people try to think out of the box. We call them crazies. I've been called so many times this word, or marvels, or rebel. I've been called the chief rebels, but hopefully in a positive way. We try actually to go beyond what, think out of the box, go beyond the conventional. All these people who did that, people call them strange, or crazy, but those actually crazy people who got us to where we are now. Most of the scientists of the world in the last 200 years, very few of them benefited or seeing the benefit of their efforts. Most of them, it was recognized after they died. Why? Because they were thinking out of the box. Why? Because they were thinking out of the norm. Why? Because they think out, and I subjected to this myself, and I give you examples now. Just one example but also interestingly, most people who made discoveries, and I said this in previous talks and previous occasions, and I even challenged some colleagues and some friends who are completely, and they take pride of not having a cell in their body believes. And I stand in front of them and they say, I have no cell in my body that doesn't believe. Okay? And I challenged them, I said, give me one discovery, scientific discovery, made by a non-believer. Don't confuse this with inventions, because I'll come to inventions. Discovery like gravity, magnetism, electricity, DNA, all these things, which is discovered first time. Okay? Inventions, using those knowledge or ideas and imagination to come with, for example, new devices, new processes, those inventions. So in our own mind, our understanding of the different ranking of the scientific knowledge or knowledge is not clear sometimes. Okay? When something we cannot explain, we call it miracles, but actually it is governed by principles we don't know. Okay? And so with the discoveries and with inventions. Next, please. And before I go to let me just say about, how the relationship so far between faith and science. Obviously, unfortunately, because of practices, nothing to do with faith, but very much, thank you very much. Yes, that's much better, thank you. But very much is the practices of religious groups, which is, again, I must emphasize, there's a big difference between religion and faith. Faith is an inspiration, is a relation between us and the world around us, trying to establish that relation, wondering about the world around us. Okay? That is faith, inspiration. Religion, to a certain extent, is an organized practices or rituals, okay, which sometimes take things completely away from the faith subject or faith point. Thank you very much. So, unfortunately, in this part of the world, in Europe in particular, there was a huge conflict, which sadly blamed on the faith, but it was the practices of the religious establishments, because they saw there's a threat to their empires, establishment, power, because in other words, and this is not unique to Christianity, but I could say to most religions, they don't like people to think for themselves. They don't like people to be independent and make their own mind, so they like people to come to them and ask for the answer to their problems, whether it's in a form of fatwa, whether it's a form of advice, or it's a form of any sort of guidance. Okay? So that's one bad example. There is another example of relation between both faith and science, which is interdependencies. Everybody goes his own way. Okay? And this is convenient for many scientists, obviously, for the scientific community, but also convenient for some established religious organizations. There is also the dialogue, which is not fully open, but also there is the integration. And what I'm here actually today trying to, hopefully I'm not trying to convince anybody, everybody has the choice, everybody has the freedom to make their own, but hopefully to bring examples to illustrate how important this integration is. And I will throw this question about, for example, now, our own scientific understanding. For the last 400 years, the scientific community grows from strength to strength through the review process, the peer review process, through experimentation, through questioning, through observations, through all these processes. But has this scientific process taking us now to a safe future? Will it take us to the sustainable age? Or we are facing big challenges? Okay? Now what we are facing at the world, we are facing climate change. And our scientific community, it seems helpless. Because even they haven't agreed what are the causes. Okay? Our scientific community is still divided now, still unsure. There are climate change deniers, there are climate change, so it seems like our scientific process has not really made us or gave us the certainty about the future, which means there are things we misunderstood or we misused. Okay? Interestingly, of all creatures on earth, and this is very important, and please listen to this, or quote me for this if you like. Of all the creatures on earth, everything else working in harmony with the nature. The only disruptive, abusive, okay, damaging creature of element of people on the earth is a human. Okay? Look at that. Bacteria is working, try to bring order to nature. Animals work in a very nice way. Why human? Because while we have the intelligence and the choice, but we have social diseases, selfishness, greed, dominance, and those are no law or no scientific treatment will address those diseases except faith. Reflect on this, think about it. I've been discussing things with, you can't actually bring peace and harmony to the society just in the frame of legal and illegal. You cannot. And I've challenged colleagues. They said there is no ethics in business. Okay? And I said, you distance for failure. And they did. The very same people said this word, they distance for big failure. Okay? Because they think there is no, and only faith bring morals and ethics to any relationship or any partnership or any practice in life. And when I say faith, I'm not talking about religion. But I'll throw this question out to our scientific community, for example. And I'm sure many of the distinguished members of the audience here are scientists. Scientists told us for hundreds of years, we learned this in school, we learn it in many aspects. For example, with the subject of energy. Scientists tell us, and I'm one of them, to a very recent time, we need energy. Of course we need energy. But also told us, or tell us, all the books of science tell us that energy moves from the larger energy to the lower energy. Correct? Anybody disagree with this? Correct? So we've been all taught to believe that energy, we need energy, and energy can only move from larger to a lower because we cannot reverse the process and we cannot create energy. Everybody agree with this? Now, I give you an example in real life that is completely the opposite of this. Which has more energy, the sea or the river? Everybody agrees it's the sea. But the river flies to the sea. And that's simple example contradict our understanding for 400 years. Okay? No scientist on earth now would dispute that the river has less energy than the sea in terms of energy content. But everybody knows. So our misunderstanding of, or poor understanding, or incomplete understanding of something did not stop us from doing something and getting a benefit of something. So you can't blame the faith because it doesn't have an answer to everything. We should also blame the science because it doesn't have the answer to everything. And that's why we need actually to get the two things. Because only the imagination, why is important actually the faith, as a scientist, why faith is important to me? Why I take pride that every cell of my body is believing, has faith. Why? Because the most important thing about faith is imagination. Believing in the unknown. I stand to pray to ask for a scientific solution to my scientific problem. I don't ask for heaven. I don't ask for big money in the bank. I ask for a scientific solution to my problem. I sincerely do this. Okay? 5 minutes? Okay. So why? Because I believe in the solution. I believe the solution is up there. وَمَنْ يَتَّقِ اللَّهِ يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مَخْرَجًا وَيَرْزُقْهُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا يَحْتَسِبُ. But at which level of my faith? Is taqwa. So I need to reach the highest level of faith, the certainty, before I can get something without making an effort for. It's not by being a Muslim, it's not by being a believer, it's by being muttaqi, certain, the highest level of faith. Then you will get what you didn't work for. وَمَنْ يَتَّقِ اللَّهِ يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مَخْرَجًا. Those who are certain about their faith with God, God will provide a solution. وَيَرْزُقْهُمْ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا يَحْتَسِبُ. And will provide for them, give them without planning for, without accounting for, without making any effort for. I've done an experiment, or I had a vision about principles that every scientific colleague, from head of engineering at Cambridge to vice president of the Royal Society and top scientists in the UK, said, "You're crazy. You can't be, because this is counter to all our understanding of, we can't find this in any book or in any subject. Where do you get this from?" And I said, I got it from my faith. I saw it in a vision. I tell you personal experience. I had once at the palace, in Buckingham Palace, and I met with Duke of Kent. He was at the reception at the Royal at the palace with the Queen to receive the prize award for water research, and I was asked a question by the Duke of Kent: which university Al-Khwarizmi went to? Because we know scientists go to universities and they learn from these universities something. Why would Al-Khwarizmi need to invent algebra? And what is algebra? It was said earlier here. Algebra means actually jabr, which means try to force something to equal something. So when we say x plus y equals something, we are forcing the unknowns x and y to equal. That's what the word comes from, forcing something. Okay? Maybe British people hate the word algebra, but that's actually what the name comes from. Like chemistry. is the science of quantities, علم الكميات, because it's to do with quantities and accurate measurement and so on. This is all come from the Arab world. Which university they went to? And I said to His Royal Highness, the Duke, I said, they didn't go to a university, they went to a university of Muhammad. And the textbook for this university is the Quran. A lot of people, unfortunately, Muslims, they don't even know the meaning of the word Al-Quran. Why the Quran, called the Quran? It's not to read. Every book to read. You don't have a book to eat. So it's ridiculous to think that the Quran called Al-Quran because to read. It's not for that. The Quran means the book that explains itself. اقرئه مني السلام ابلغه. I mean the book that explains itself. So the Quran is self-explanatory. It can explain itself. If you read the Quran in a consistent way, you will find the answer to every question, scientific or otherwise. The Quran is not a science book in a conventional way, but it's very scientific. In every sentence, I studied the subject for years as a scientist, taking away all my religious obligations. I could not find a single word that is not confirming or consistent with the scientific knowledge we know. But when I looked at the interpretations, oh my God. I'll give you one example. Sorry, I'm exceeding my time. The Quran said, Allah nur as-samawati wal ard. You go to all translation and talk, God is the light of the universe. Sorry, light is matter. Photon is matter. You cannot, even if it's zero mass, nur is a reflection, it's not matter. So the Quran used the word reflection. The universe is a reflection of the power of God. And that's very scientific and very true. Okay? I feel sad for those who read Quran in English translations or any other subject. And I'm sorry, it's a shame on us Arab, and I say it loudly. We spend billions building, high building and printing copies, but we failed to translate the Quran properly to other languages. With all due respect to brothers and sisters who made the effort from other backgrounds or other languages to interpret the Quran, but it's shame on us, the Arab, because we didn't make the effort. When I read the Quran, there's a verse in the Quran which says in English, and I tell you this experience. I gave a copy of the Quran to my dear friend, Italian. He's my real brother, like real brother. My children call him uncle. And he came to me and he said, Adel, I'm really puzzled. And I said, why? He said, I know how faith means to you. And I know the source of knowledge for you, the Quran. And I know how you respect that source of knowledge. But he said, as I was reading the Quran you gave me, there's a page that says, don't take the Jewish and the Christians as your friends. I said, oh my God, where is this? لا تتخذ اليهود والنصارى أولياء من دون الله. But I said, that doesn't mean that. That's completely different. It says like, don't take the Jewish and the Christians to teach you your faith or your commander in faith. That's fair. There's nothing wrong with that. I go to the mosque, expect somebody Muslim. I go to the church expecting a Christian person talking, not the other way around. That's what the Quran said. The Quran said, وَلَتَجَدَنَّ أَشَدَّ مَوَدَّ لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. The Quran talk about the closest to the believers in action, in compassion, in every aspect are the Christians. So how the Quran saying this? And why? The Quran said, because they are humble and they look for the truth. So how come the Quran telling me in one page, don't take them as a friends, and the other way is telling me how close? So it's just too much to say. I'm sorry, I think I exceeded my time, but just can we go to the final page, please? I mean, there are many examples, but I said loudly and profoundly that no scientific discovery made by a non-believer. And I wish somebody to provide me an evidence, otherwise I will shut up, I will not mention this anymore. Go please to the end, at the very end. At the very end, the conclusion, because I'm done, okay? So, as I said earlier, there should be no conflict between science and faith. And I can talk about this subject for hours or days and give examples. As I said, science cannot provide the answer to all things because now we are facing those challenges, climate change, energy, and you name it, cancer, you name it. Yes, there is hope, but the hope can only come through faith. But we need, there was actually an important slide, I missed it somewhere, but I should remember. There's a very important saying by Einstein, the famous scientist. He said, faith without knowledge, without science, is a blind faith. And this is very important. Science or knowledge without faith is a lame. Yes, you can make progress, but you cannot make much progress. And you can see actually the ability of a lame is limited. He or she may do a lot of things, but may not be able to climb a mountain, for example. What we need actually, we need to have the abilities of climbing the mountains or addressing those global challenges. And this comes with faith, with science. Is not just a vision, but also a limited power. He did not say the third part, he said only two, but I add to that, if we have the faith with our scientific knowledge, we can see beyond the conventional. We will be free to think out of the box. All my inventions, the opposite to what people are doing. When people walk to my lab and they say, this is right, I'm worried. I've done something wrong. But everybody comes to my lab, everything they see, this is wrong, and I take comfort. Once they tell this is wrong, I know that I've done right. I had my friend last week, he's the chief design engineer of Ferrari. He designed Ferrari, he said, from the bumper to the bumper, except the drawing is done by an artist. He walked to my lab, to my workshop, and he said, what are you doing, Adel? It's wrong. Everything is wrong. And I said, thank you very much. You're giving me great, And after 3 hours, in a lab where the temperature was low, he was sweating. He said, you are a magician. I said, no, you and I know we both have faith. And he said, I totally agree with you. Okay? So, science cannot provide the answer. Our current understanding of both faith and science are not complete. I talked about not understanding something doesn't mean we ignore the benefit of it. And all I can say actually that we will reach the sustainable age with the will of God. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor. At the end of the day, we are full of energy now. And there is no conflict between faith and science, and I believe this is true, but there's a conflict between the people.
Yeah, yes.
And this is why people will ask questions now.
Yes.
Any question, please?
Sorry, what do you mean? No, that's fine. I'm happy
It's
to
okay.
stand. Yeah, I'm happy
Any
to
question?
stand.
Any comment? Yeah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. I think because he was standing for long. Please, can you sit like we sit?
No,
all
fine.
of you?
I'm happy.
think-
I'm a lecturer. I
Inshallah.
talk for
Right,
hours.
mashallah.
My wife
The-
tells me you talk a lot. I said that's what I make my living.
My question is, in the past,
Yes,
there was no conflict with the religion and science.
correct.
In the contrary, a lot of those great scholars in Islam, they were most of them religious scholars.
Yes, correct.
Before they were scientists as
Correct,
well.
correct.
For therefore, as you said before, the Quran itself has a lot of secret in itself, and every day
Yes.
we discover something about it.
Yes,
But one thing which is something which dissociating what you said, that's people, you cannot be a scientist if you are a believer and vice versa. But that's to do, I think, more with our human actions than with faith and science, because faith and science, when it worked together, it produced almost 1,000 years of Muslim civilization.
yes, correct.
Don't you think that is this divorce between the two cause a lot of trouble nowadays?
Well, of course, but that's what I say. When there is an integration, because those ideas about algorithm, for example, which you are using today, it was the fruit, the benefit of faith. Al-Khwarizmi, everybody, for example, now why there was this algebra? Why would the Muslims thousands of years ago need this equation? The quadratic equation, we most of us struggle with in school, it was derived by Al-Khwarizmi. Why? Because he was asked to find a way, in the Islamic heritage, it's not really, like a simple division between, it goes in a different level, third and fourth and the fifth and sixth of the share and so on. And it's always complex to work out this. So Al-Khwarizmi tried to work out a formula that people can come, doesn't matter how many children they have or how many daughters or how many relatives or how many, use that formula to give the answer. They also needed, for example, to know the direction to the Kaaba when they are traveling. They use mathematical tools. So it's the faith-inspired inventions or innovations which gave us those tools or those science which obviously now we benefit from. So all this, I'll give you an example, chemistry. At the time in Baghdad, where many people, for example, before houses were not built of brick today, or most people do it with either raw material from nature, wood and things, or something, or leather, piece of leather or anything like that. And obviously, when there's a fire, this happens so quickly. The fire spreads so quickly. So then, about 1,000 years ago, Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq asked Jabir ibn Hayyan, the chemist, to develop a material that fire resistance. Can you believe 1,000 years ago, we have material was invented by Jabir ibn Hayyan under the instruction of his teacher or scholar to fire resistance material? The distillation process, as a chemical engineer now, we do, is the same distillation process which was invented by Jabir ibn Hayyan 1,000 years ago. It was the faith-inspired inventions took us or get us to where we are today. This is not my own word. You can Google this on Google. Jim al-Khalili, Professor Jim al-Khalili, my colleague at Surrey, who is the president of a humanist society in the UK, which obviously he's not a believer, he wrote a book and he made so many documentaries on the BBC, and he wrote so many articles in the UK main newspapers, and he confirmed without any dispute that the fathers of the scientific process we have now, or the scientific, the scientific process we have, experimentally or theoretically in any subject, were the Muslim scholars in Kufa and in Baghdad at the time. The father of chemistry, the father of physics, the father of medicine, the father of mathematics, and so on and so forth, is the faith-inspired invention and discoveries. Thank you.
Okay, Professor, thank you very much. I think it's time to stop now.
Okay,
And
as I said, otherwise I'll be here, and I still have to drive 4 hours and a half maybe to Surrey. Thank you.
All right, okay, thank you very much. Have a good evening. Thank you.